For decades, we've been told that sunlight is something to avoid. Wear sunscreen, stay in the shade, protect your skin. These recommendations are based on solid scientific evidence. Too much ultraviolet radiation can damage the skin, accelerate visible aging, and increase the risk of skin cancer. There is no question that excessive sun exposure carries real dangers, but over the past several years, scientists have begun asking a different question. What happens when we avoid sunlight almost completely? Modern life has changed the way humans interact with the sun. Many of us spend most of our days indoors. We work under artificial lighting, commute in enclosed vehicles, exercise inside gyms, and relax in front of televisions or computer screens. Even on sunny days, it's surprisingly easy to spend very little time outdoors. Researchers have started wondering whether this dramatic shift could have unexpected consequences for our health. After all, the human body did not evolve in offices, shopping malls, or apartment buildings. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived beneath the open sky. Their internal clocks were synchronized with sunrise and sunset. Their skin regularly encountered natural sunlight. Their biology developed in an environment where light wasn't simply something they saw. It was information that guided countless processes throughout the body. Today, scientists know that sunlight affects much more than our ability to see. It influences our biological clock. It helps regulate sleep and wakefulness. It supports the production of vitamin D. It interacts with the immune system. And researchers have even discovered that sunlight may trigger the release of molecules capable of influencing blood pressure and cardiovascular health. Does this mean more sunlight is always better? Not at all. Like many aspects of biology, the relationship between sunlight and health is remarkably complex. Too little sunlight may have consequences. Too much sunlight certainly does. Finding the right balance appears to be what matters most. In this video, we'll explore what current science says about sunlight and healthy aging. We'll examine the difference between UVA and UVB radiation. We'll look at how sunlight helps the body produce vitamin D. We'll discuss fascinating research into nitric oxide, a molecule that may explain some of sunlight's cardiovascular effects. We'll also examine why scientists have investigated possible links between sunlight, heart disease, and even COVID-19 outcomes. And finally, we'll answer a surprisingly controversial question. Should you wear sunglasses? As always, we'll separate well-established evidence from promising but still developing research. Because understanding sunlight isn't about fear, and it isn't about chasing miracle cures. It's about understanding one of the oldest environmental influences on human biology. For most of human history, sunlight was a constant part of daily life. Long before electricity, smartphones, or indoor offices, the rising and setting of the sun shaped nearly every aspect of human behavior. People woke with daylight, worked outdoors, and rested after sunset. Over thousands of generations, the human body adapted to this predictable cycle of light and darkness. That evolutionary history still influences us today. Although we often think of sunlight as simply something that allows us to see, our bodies use it as a powerful biological signal. Specialized cells in the eyes detect natural light and send information directly to the brain's master biological clock. This tiny region, known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, helps coordinate our circadian rhythm, a roughly 24-hour cycle that regulates sleep, hormone production, body temperature, metabolism, and countless other physiological functions. Morning sunlight is particularly important because it helps synchronize this internal clock. When our circadian rhythm stays aligned with the natural day-night cycle, sleep tends to improve, energy levels become more stable, and many biological processes function more efficiently. This doesn't mean sunlight solves every health problem, but it does remind us that our bodies evolved expecting regular exposure to natural daylight. Scientists have also discovered that sunlight influences the body in ways that extend far beyond the eyes. Some effects occur in the skin, others affect blood vessels. Still others involve the immune system and hormone regulation. To understand these effects, we first need to understand something about the different types of ultraviolet light. Although sunlight appears white, it actually contains many different wavelengths of energy. Some are visible to our eyes, others are invisible. Among these invisible wavelengths are ultraviolet rays, commonly divided into three categories: UVC, UVB, and UVA. Fortunately, Almost all UVC radiation is absorbed by Earth's atmosphere before it reaches the surface, so under normal circumstances, it isn't something we encounter outdoors. That leaves UVA and UVB, the two forms of ultraviolet radiation that have the greatest impact on human health. While they are often grouped together, they behave quite differently. UVA accounts for approximately 95% of the ultraviolet radiation that reaches Earth's surface. It has a longer wavelength, allowing it to penetrate deeper into the skin. Unlike UVB, UVA remains relatively consistent throughout the day and can even pass through window glass. For many years, scientists primarily associated UVA with skin aging. It contributes to the breakdown of collagen and elastin, the proteins responsible for keeping skin firm and resilient. Over time, repeated exposure can lead to wrinkles, changes in skin texture, and pigmentation. Researchers also know that excessive UVA exposure contributes to DNA damage indirectly by generating reactive oxygen species, increasing the risk of skin cancer when combined with other forms of ultraviolet exposure. In other words, more UVA is not necessarily better, but the story doesn't end there. During the last 2 decades, scientists have discovered that UVA may also trigger the release of nitric oxide from compounds stored within the skin. We'll explore why that discovery has attracted so much attention later in this video. UVB, on the other hand, behaves differently. It has a shorter wavelength and carries more energy than UVA, but most of it is filtered by the atmosphere. As a result, UVB intensity varies considerably depending on the season, latitude, altitude, weather conditions, and time of day. It is strongest around midday, particularly during the summer months. Unlike UVA, UVB does not penetrate as deeply into the skin. However, it is largely responsible for sunburn. It can directly damage DNA, which is one reason repeated sunburns significantly increase the risk of skin cancer. Yet UVB also performs one remarkable function that no nutritional supplement, lamp, or medication can fully replace under natural conditions. When UVB rays strike the skin, they initiate a chemical reaction that allows the body to produce vitamin D. This process has been part of human biology for countless generations. Without sufficient UVB exposure, or adequate dietary intake and supplementation when needed, vitamin D levels can decline, particularly in older adults or people who spend very little time outdoors. So, while excessive UVB can be harmful, completely avoiding it may also have unintended consequences. This brings us to one of the most important principles in modern health science. Neither UVA nor UVB is inherently good or bad. Both have benefits, both have risks, and in both cases, the dose matters. Too little may deprive the body of important biological signals. Too much can damage cells and tissues. Healthy aging is rarely about choosing one extreme or the other. More often, it's about finding the balance that allows our biology to benefit while minimizing unnecessary harm. That balance becomes even more important when we begin exploring one of sunlight's best-known effects, its role in the production of vitamin D. Among all the biological effects of sunlight, none is more familiar than its role in vitamin D production. Often called the sunshine vitamin, vitamin D is actually more like a hormone than a traditional vitamin. Nearly every cell in the body has receptors that can respond to it, allowing vitamin D to influence a remarkable range of biological processes. The journey begins in the skin. When UVB radiation reaches the surface of the skin, it converts a naturally occurring compound into a precursor of vitamin D. Over the following hours, this molecule is further processed by the liver and kidneys, eventually becoming the active form that the body can use. This elegant system has supported human biology for thousands of years. Yet as people grow older, it becomes less efficient. Aging skin produces vitamin D less effectively than younger skin. At the same time, many older adults spend less time outdoors, whether because of retirement, reduced mobility, chronic illness, or simply a preference for staying inside during hot or cold weather. The result is that vitamin D deficiency becomes increasingly common with age. Scientists have linked low vitamin D levels with reduced bone density, muscle weakness, and a greater risk of falls in older adults. Since fractures can significantly reduce independence and quality of life, maintaining adequate vitamin D is considered an important part of healthy aging. Vitamin D also plays a role in helping the immune system function properly. Rather than simply making immune responses stronger, it appears to help the immune system respond in a more balanced way, supporting its ability to fight infections while avoiding excessive inflammation that can damage healthy tissues. Researchers continue to investigate its potential influence on cardiovascular health, cognitive function, and metabolic diseases. While many observational studies have found associations between low vitamin D levels and a wide range of chronic illnesses, interpreting these findings is not always straightforward. This is one of the most important lessons in medical research. People with low vitamin D levels often have other characteristics that may influence their health. They may spend less time outdoors, exercise less frequently, have chronic illnesses, or follow different dietary patterns. In other words, low vitamin D may sometimes be a marker of poor overall health rather than the direct cause of disease. Large clinical trials have produced mixed results when vitamin D supplements were given to otherwise healthy adults. In many cases, supplementation has not produced the dramatic reductions in disease risk that earlier observational studies seem to suggest. That doesn't mean vitamin D isn't important, far from it. Correcting a true deficiency remains beneficial, especially for bone health and muscle function. But it also reminds us that no single nutrient can fully explain the complex relationship between sunlight and health. Scientists have therefore begun looking beyond vitamin D itself, and that search led to one of the most fascinating discoveries in recent years. Hidden within the skin are compounds capable of storing nitric oxide and related molecules. Nitric oxide is a tiny signaling molecule with enormous importance. It helps blood vessels relax, it improves blood flow, it supports communication between cells lining the blood vessels, and it plays an essential role in maintaining healthy cardiovascular function. Normally, the body produces nitric oxide through specialized enzymes, but researchers discovered that sunlight, particularly UVA radiation, may activate an additional pathway. When UVA reaches the skin, it can release nitric oxide from these stored compounds, allowing some of it to enter the bloodstream. This effect may occur within minutes. Several experimental studies have shown that UVA exposure can temporarily widen blood vessels and produce modest reductions in blood pressure. Although these reductions are generally small, even modest improvements in blood pressure across a population could have meaningful public health implications over time. This observation has generated considerable scientific interest because high blood pressure remains one of the leading risk factors for heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular diseases worldwide. Could regular, moderate exposure to sunlight contribute to better cardiovascular health through this nitric oxide pathway? Possibly. Several large observational studies have reported that people living in regions with greater sunlight exposure often experience lower rates of cardiovascular mortality after accounting for many other factors. However, these findings should be interpreted carefully. People who spend more time outdoors may also be more physically active. They may have healthier body weights. They may sleep better. They may experience lower levels of chronic stress. Each of these factors can independently improve heart health. As a result, scientists cannot conclude that sunlight alone is responsible for the differences observed. Instead, the evidence suggests that sunlight may be one piece of a much larger puzzle. Researchers also became interested in whether sunlight, and particularly vitamin D status and nitric oxide biology, might influence outcomes during the COVID-19 pandemic. Several observational studies found that lower vitamin D levels and reduced sunlight exposure were associated with higher risks of severe illness or death in some populations. Other researchers proposed that nitric oxide, because of its effects on blood vessels and potential antiviral properties observed in laboratory settings, might also contribute to these observations. These ideas attracted significant attention, but it's important to distinguish between association and proof. Although some studies suggested that adequate vitamin D status or greater sunlight exposure might be linked with better outcomes, clinical trials have not demonstrated that simply increasing sun exposure prevents COVID-19 or guarantees a milder illness. Likewise, while nitric oxide continues to be studied for its potential therapeutic role, the evidence is still evolving. The safest conclusion is also the most scientifically accurate. Moderate sunlight exposure appears to support several biological systems that are important for overall health. But sunlight should not be viewed as a treatment for heart disease, COVID-19, or any other specific illness. Instead, It is one of many environmental factors that may contribute to long-term health when combined with regular physical activity, a balanced diet, adequate sleep, and other healthy lifestyle habits. Understanding that distinction allows us to appreciate the remarkable biology of sunlight without expecting it to perform miracles. This brings us to one of the most debated questions in modern health discussions. Should you wear sunglasses? If you've spent time on social media, you've probably seen claims that sunglasses block the body's ability to recognize sunlight. Some posts suggest that wearing sunglasses prevents vitamin D production. Others claim they interfere with hormone regulation or completely eliminate the health benefits of being outdoors. These ideas are certainly intriguing, but what does the scientific evidence actually say? Let's begin with what we know. Vitamin D is produced in the skin, not in the eyes. When UVB radiation reaches exposed skin, the process of vitamin D synthesis begins regardless of whether a person is wearing sunglasses. Current scientific evidence does not support the claim that wearing sunglasses prevents your body from making vitamin D. The same applies to the proposed nitric oxide pathway. Nitric oxide release occurs primarily within the skin following UVA exposure. Wearing sunglasses protects the eyes, but does not prevent sunlight from reaching exposed areas of the skin. This doesn't mean the eyes are unimportant. In fact, natural light entering the eyes plays a vital role in regulating the body's circadian rhythm. Morning daylight helps synchronize the brain's internal clock, supporting healthy sleep, hormone release, alertness, and overall well-being. But this benefit comes from exposure to natural visible light, not from exposing the eyes to harmful levels of ultraviolet radiation. Scientists generally agree that there is no health advantage to allowing excessive UV rays to reach the eyes. In contrast, decades of research have demonstrated that prolonged exposure to ultraviolet radiation can damage delicate eye tissues. Over time, excessive UV exposure has been associated with an increased risk of cataracts, certain disorders of the cornea, and other forms of eye damage. People who spend many years working outdoors may also face a higher cumulative exposure. For these reasons, ophthalmologists routinely recommend high-quality sunglasses that block both UVA and UVB radiation, especially during periods of intense sunlight. This recommendation is not about avoiding daylight. It is about protecting one of the body's most sensitive organs while continuing to enjoy the benefits of spending time outdoors. Like many aspects of healthy aging, context matters. Early in the morning or later in the afternoon, when sunlight is less intense, many people can comfortably spend time outside without needing sunglasses, depending on local conditions and individual sensitivity. On the other hand, during bright midday sunlight, near reflective surfaces such as water, snow, or sand, or whenever glare becomes uncomfortable, protecting the eyes is a sensible decision. The goal is not to fear the sun, nor is it to stare directly into it or avoid eye protection altogether. The healthiest approach is to enjoy natural daylight while minimizing unnecessary ultraviolet damage. As our understanding of sunlight continues to evolve, one message has become increasingly clear. The relationship between sunlight and health is far more nuanced than many headlines suggest. Sunlight is neither a miracle medicine nor a hidden poison. It is a natural environmental factor that has shaped human biology for countless generations. Too little sunlight may contribute to vitamin D deficiency, circadian disruption, and reduced time spent outdoors. Too much sunlight increases the risk of premature skin aging, eye damage, and skin cancer. Healthy aging lies somewhere between these extremes. For most people, that means spending regular time outdoors, staying physically active, avoiding sunburn, and using appropriate protection when ultraviolet exposure becomes excessive. There is no universal number of minutes that works for everyone. The ideal amount of sunlight depends on many factors, including skin tone, age, geographic location, season, weather, altitude, clothing, and individual medical conditions. What works safely for one person may be too much, or too little, for another. This is why personalized advice from healthcare professionals remains important, particularly for people with a history of skin cancer, photosensitive conditions, or other medical concerns. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from today's research is not that sunlight has suddenly become a treatment for aging. Rather, it reminds us that human health rarely depends on a single factor. Longevity is shaped by thousands of small influences working together: nutritious food, regular movement, restorative sleep, strong social connections, stress management, and yes, appropriate exposure to natural daylight. Each contributes a small piece to the larger picture. As scientists continue exploring the biology of sunlight, they will undoubtedly uncover new insights. Some current theories will be strengthened, others may be revised. That is how science advances, not by defending fixed beliefs, but by continually testing them against new evidence. For now, the evidence suggests a balanced perspective. Respect the power of the sun, protect yourself from excessive exposure. But don't forget that, for millions of years, sunlight has been one of the natural signals that helped shape the remarkable biology of the human body. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy thoughtful, evidence-based conversations about healthy aging, be sure to join us again. Together, we'll continue exploring the science of living longer, living stronger, and living better. Until next time, stay healthy, stay curious, and enjoy the sunshine wisely.